Hello, everyone, and welcome to another season preview episode here on the Batflip Entertainment channel. I'm Matt here today with Damien, and today we are doing take two of the Washington Nationals preview. We actually recorded one last night, and then today some big news broke for the Nationals with MacKenzie Gore getting traded to the Rangers for a interesting group of prospects. So we'll talk about that a little bit more here in today's episode. But we thought it was a good idea to kind of redo it since that's a big piece for this Nationals team that they're losing, and they're adding in some interesting guys we will probably mention as well. Although a lot of them probably won't be big leaguers this year. But the Nationals are coming off a really rough season last year. They had kind of expected to maybe take a step forward last year a little bit. They had some young talent come into the season that everyone was pretty high on, and it just didn't happen. It was really rough for them last year. They ended up with a final record of, I believe, 66 and 96. Finished last in the National League East, and so it was not good. But they did get a number one draft pick last year. They have a couple of really interesting young players, few interesting pieces in their farm system. Maybe not quite the farm system that you'd like to see from a team that's been out of contention for, 5-6 years now. But they're in a rebuild. New front office this year. So, Damien, what are your overall thoughts on the Nationals coming into 2026 and where they're at as a franchise?
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned in the previous episode that will not air ever, the lost episode here, it's a transitional phase. You had dealt with Mike Rizzo for a long time. Now you have new front office members, Paul Toboni and Blake Butera as the new manager. Toboni was, I believe, the VP of scouting and an assistant GM in Boston. Blake Butera was a minor league manager in the Rays system. Yeah. So it's really just a new era here that you're kind of shifting focus in, and those guys need to cement their style of play and their style of team and who they want on here. And obviously we got a little piece of that with the MacKenzie Gore trade today. So and for that, we don't know when this one's actually going up, but we are recording on January 22nd, the day that Gore did get traded. So if anything else happens, we'll see. Maybe there'll be a take three. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't think there's been too much rumored beyond what's happened by now, but that is a good caveat to have on all these early episodes here, is things could happen. I don't know that it changes their outlook too much, but some of the things we talk about could end up being a little bit different here later on in the off season. So we can move on now and talk about what they've done this off season. Their subtractions they weren't very big until today. Yeah. They lost Mason Thompson, decent reliever. They lost Paul DeYoung, veteran shortstop. Not really a huge loss there. Hasn't been great for the last few years. Josh Bell is another veteran that they had that just hasn't really been that great the last couple of years. And then Derek Law is another reliever who, not the biggest, not the end of the world to lose him. Jose Ferrer, they traded to Seattle in a very interesting trade, which we'll talk a little bit more about here in a minute. They brought in a pretty interesting prospect in that trade. And then, of course, the big news of the day, MacKenzie Gore. So, Damien, obviously, most of these losses weren't that big, but what do you think of the MacKenzie Gore move and the subtraction of him from this team?
Yeah, it's weird. It's been rumored for 2 years now, or a year at least. Yep. And we thought it was going to happen at the deadline. I think it was pretty close to the deadline. I believe that was to the Cubs at that time. So you had a feeling that it was going to kind of happen. He's got 2 years worth of control. He's a Scott Boras guy. Extensions are very rare with Boras. And then you get the new flux of front office members who have their own way of doing things. I think MacKenzie Gore is very good. I like the move for him to Texas. We'll talk more about him in that one, but it just felt like this was going to happen if it was in the offseason or at the deadline. It was going to happen soon. It is a big loss though, right? This is a big part of the Juan Soto trade that tree kind of branches out even more now. But losing a guy who has ace caliber stuff, who is just kind of a little tweak or two away from reaching that threshold we think he can, it's obviously going to hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at their rotation, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes, it's looking a little bit rough right now.
Yeah.
But we can talk quickly about the additions here. Harry Ford's a very interesting addition, as I mentioned, bringing him in that Jose Ferrer trade, former, well, still a top 50 prospect on some sites. Put up pretty good numbers in the minor leagues. There is some question about whether he's going to stick at catcher, and some of his batted ball profile stuff has some people down on him. So a very interesting move there to pick him up, and really it didn't feel like they had to give up too much to get him.
Right.
So interesting move there. Foster Griffin is one of those pitchers that's gone over to Asia and kind of rebuilt himself. It's been very good over there. Could be interesting to see if he can translate his game back to the majors and see if he's able to turn that into a be another one of these success stories. We've seen like Merrill Kelly being a big success story doing that. Eric Fetty had a really good couple of seasons, right after doing that. So it's going to be interesting to see if he can be the next in that line of guys who've gone over and come back and had a lot of success. Matt Mervis, Trevor Gott, a couple of minor league free agent pickups. Mervis is a former top prospect for the Cubs who is some big league time, never really panned out in the big leagues, but he's at times shown some talent in the minors. So we'll see if he can get on the big league roster and get some real playing time this year. Trevor Gott's a veteran reliever that could help out some at some point. Joey Weimer's a former top prospect they claimed off of waivers. Really athletic guy, hasn't panned out. And then the guys they got in that trade, Gavin Fien, Abimelec Ortiz, and Alejandro Rosario, all in that trade. Don't really expect those guys to make too much of an impact at the major league level this year. Maybe Ortiz, he's a first base type that could make an impact. But Damian, what do you think of the return they got in that MacKenzie Gore trade? And do any of these other guys, with the exception of maybe Ford and Griffin, any of those other three really interest you going into this year?
Yeah, and it is also worth mentioning real quick that they did get two other pieces in
Yes.
that trade in a Devin Fitz-Gerald, who's a young shortstop, third base, and then Yeremy Cabrera, who's a young outfielder as well. Didn't really have the room just to put those two. They were both farther away as well. Gavin Fien is interesting, 12th overall. I think he was 12th overall pick in the last draft here from the Rangers. He has a little bit of a quirky swing, kind of think of like Giancarlo Stanton, but if he stands more closed, like more upright than Stanton does at times, and it's a little awkward. Some people were high on him, some people aren't. It seems like Paul Toboni obviously was. Alejandro Rosario was a guy who was a highly rated prospect going into last year, ended up needing Tommy John surgery. So he's going to miss, or he missed all of last season. He's 24 years old, has only been up to high A. I think there's very high level stuff here. I don't think he makes an impact this year at all. But I will say they do have a fun young pitching prospects here with Rosario, Ciorca, and Susana now.
Yeah.
And Abimelec Ortiz is probably the one that you'll see hit the major leagues this year. He was had him up, and then now the
their number 28 prospect in the I believe it was still listed as in the Ranger system. That was on Fangraphs.
Yeah, and he got time up at AAA last year. In total in the minor leagues last year, 25 homers, 124 WRC plus, 257 between AA and AAA. You'll see when we get to this, they're kind of lacking a true, real first baseman. So I would not be surprised to see him get some run up there this year. He's 23 years old. He's out of he's got his minor league options, but he's on the 40 man. So I would assume he probably gets some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we can move on and talk about the bats for this team. Devin Lyle's an interesting left fielder who had a good second half last year. Jacob Young in center has been there a while, great defender. Dylan Cruz, it's going to be a very interesting year for him. Former top prospect, has really struggled in the bigs. James Wood is DHing, which I would like to see him play the field more than DH with him being a young potential star player. But, they've got a good defenders in the outfield here, so we'll see what happens there. Luis Garcia, they've got playing first. Nasim Nunez at second base, really good defender. CJ Abrams is a little bit of a inconsistent player, but he's got some really good. He's got a really high talent level. We'll see if he can put together a full, really good season this year. Brady House at third, former top prospect, has great power. We'll see. Kybert Ruiz has been a little bit of a disappointment for them behind the plate, but he's going to start off the year there, it looks like. At least that's the projection from Fangraphs. We'll see if that ends up happening. But bench, Riley Adams, Chaparro, Tana, and Weimer. Not great depth there. But
actually, that's a typo too. We didn't get to change that. Riley Adams was DFA'd today, so
okay.
Backup catcher will be Drew Millis.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, that's right. And and obviously we talked about it a minute ago, Harry Ford too. I'll be very surprised if he's not up here at some point pretty early in the year. So, Damian, out of the position players here, who do you think is kind of a breakout candidate? Obviously, Abrams and Wood are two guys who are kind of established, but out of the rest of them, who do you think is a breakout candidate? And I guess, what do you think of Dylan Cruz this year? Because Dylan Cruz is a guy that was a top draft pick, tons of hype, top prospect. People thought he was major league ready, and he's been really rough in the majors his first 2 years. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the two guys for me is obviously Dylan Cruz. You have to establish if you're going to be able to reach the major league caliber. I think this is what parts of his third MLB season will be here. You were the number 2 overall pick in your draft class, right behind Paul Skeens. There's talent there. You just have to be able to find it. And I'm hoping that maybe the new system coming in with Toboni and the other guys, they have some maybe swing changes or some other things that they see with him that will help him out. And then Dalen Lyle is another one. He had a really good second half of the year. In his 91 games, especially had a 132 WRC plus, a 1.4 WAR. He looked very fun, almost hit 300. Some of the metrics really back up that he can replicate that. So I think Dalen Lyle, if he's able to really break out and give them another true guy there with Wood, Abrams, and then if Cruz is able to figure out, his prospect pedigree and find that there in the major leagues, that's going to be a big key to this team, building the foundation moving forward.
Yep. Dalen Lyle is very interesting. Like you said, last year he had 321 at bats last year, 351 plate appearances. He was very well above average in whiff rate. He didn't strike out a lot. He didn't chase a lot. He didn't walk very much, but you would think with a really good chase rate, not being very high, that the walks would improve in a full season. That might have been a little bit of luck. But his batted ball profile, his exit velos, barrel rates, hard hit rates really low, but his expected batting average is 100th percentile, and his launch angle his sweet spot percentage is 100th percentile. Yeah. So very interesting profile here, with some like insanely good in it and some not so good in it. Defensively, he wasn't great. We'll see if maybe that's something that gets worked on. He's 92nd percentile sprint speed. Yeah. So maybe
it's more positioning.
Yeah, positioning and just kind of getting used to being the big league level, that kind of stuff. But very interesting profile there. So that is definitely a guy to keep an eye on to see how he can continue to improve in 2026 to help this team out. But I guess we can move on. And then prospects. I know we mentioned Ford. Seaver King is a former college draft pick who I think is going to be in Double-A this year, but you never know with college guys. He might end up, moving pretty quick. And then Eli Willits, I wanted to mention him. He's not going to be in the big leagues this year. He was the number 1 pick in the draft last year, so I thought it was worth mentioning him. They've got a lot of draft picks. Obviously, we talked a little bit about some of those other guys that they just acquired today in the Gore trade earlier. Ortiz being one of them who could end up filling in here at first base at some point. So moving on, we can talk about the pitching a little bit. So this pitching rotation doesn't look that great anymore. It didn't look great before, and then they just traded their best guy. So Cade Cavalli is going to be their ace, quote unquote ace, I guess, the de facto ace. He does have ace stuff, or he has at times in the minor leagues. Dealt with tons of injuries throughout his career. So we'll see if he's able to put together a healthy season, because he does have a pretty high ceiling if he's able to be healthy and be at his best. Brad Lord is here too. He's shown some interesting-ish stuff. He kind of split time between reliever and starter last year, but had a pretty good year. A 4.34 ERA last year. Not the best, but not too bad either. And then Jake Irvin spent a lot of time in the big leagues over the last few years. Hasn't been very successful. His projection's not great, 0.64 there. Josiah Gray's kind of interesting, former top prospect, part of the Trey Turner trade, I believe.
Yep.
And came over and has showed maybe a half season of success, and other than that, has just not been great. And he's also gotten injured a couple times, and he's coming off of, I believe, Tommy John surgery, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's been a while for him, and it'll be good to see him at least make a comeback and be back in the big leagues. But we'll see how effective he is. And then Foster Griffin, we mentioned him earlier in the additions. Very interesting pitcher there with coming back over from Asia. Let's see how he fits in. He might end up being their best guy this year, and he's listed as the number 5 here. But Damien, without MacKenzie Gore, this is looking pretty rough. So do you have is there any level of like interest in this? I know Cavalli's kind of interesting. Griffin's interesting-ish, but like, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's interesting things if you're a diehard baseball fan like you and I are. I don't think the average fan will be too interested in watching Nationals baseball, especially for the pitching staff. But like you mentioned, Cade Cavalli has some prospect status behind him. He has good stuff. Foster Griffin, we've seen some guys go to Japan and come back and have success stories. Merrill Kelly is probably the biggest indicator of that, in his career. And you mentioned Josiah Gray. He is a former top 20 overall prospect when he graduated. Like you mentioned, big part of the Trey Turner Max Scherzer trade. He was an all-star that one season and then got hurt. I'm really looking forward to his bounce back. He is a great guy as well. So I'm really hoping that Gray's able to bounce back and we see there's true frontline starter stuff there. But you have to mix some of it in. He's never got the walks really under control. Coming back from Tommy John, that's not an easy thing either. You see guys kind of struggle with that in the meantime. So there's stuff to work on for sure. But there's the prospect pedigree there. So it really comes down to, can you find anything with these guys? Again, we keep mentioning it, but what is the new front office? What's the new style? What is your style? But what's the new, game plan for pitchers coming in, right? Yeah. Mike Rizzo and them, they had the thing. You remember those signs up around National Spring Training, I don't care how hard you throw a ball forward. Well, Paul Toboni and those guys are going to care how hard you throw the ball, right? They are very stuff-oriented. They are very analytical-based, especially with Blake Butera coming from the Rays. They're going to dive more into that. So it's going to be interesting to see how these guys level up now, getting more of that rather than the true, old school style, just put the ball in play type stuff.
Yeah. So, yeah. Looking at their bullpen here, this bullpen is not very good. It's just there's just really not a lot of track record here. Yeah. And the projected numbers are bad. The projected numbers are actually barely breaking even in WAR. I will mention that out of the projected relievers, rotation, and starting lineup and bench, out of the projected opening day roster that Fangraphs has, there are only 2 players that are 30 years old. They're both pitchers, but they're both exactly 30 years old. Everyone else is younger. This is a very young team. Sometimes with young bullpens, you can have a few breakouts that come out of nowhere because bullpens are so volatile. Guys will change a lot year to year. So we'll see if maybe one of these bullpen arms here can really just have a great year and kind of establish themselves here. But right now, just going into the season, it doesn't look great. And also, a couple guys to kind of note here. DJ Hers had Tommy John surgery in April last year. So there's a pretty good chance he's back this year at some point. And he was pretty good in a couple years ago. Showed some flashes of good stuff. He could factor in if he's able to come back. And Trevor Williams is here. Had an elbow internal brace procedure done last July. I don't know if he'll pitch this year. With the internal brace, they say sometimes it's like right out a year. So theoretically, you might see him late in the season. But with this team being out of contention, I'll be kind of surprised if he pitches, but we'll see. And then I guess, a couple other guys to know, Mitchell Parker, Jake Eater, both have kind of spent a little bit of time in the big leagues. Mitchell Parker spent a decent amount of time in the big leagues.
Yeah.
He's kind of, their sixth guy for their rotation right now. And Jake Eater was a prospect that had some hype a few years ago, but hasn't really panned out to this point. So, not a whole lot to write home about here with the bullpen or any of the prospects or anything. Not a lot of depth. They do have some young prospects in the pitching staff, but there's been some injury issues there over the last couple of years, especially Susana, who came over in the Soto trade. Has gotten a lot of hype. Yarlin Susana, Travis Siorka is another guy who's gotten some hype, but both of those guys have spent some time injured and aren't back yet. And then, of course, the guy they picked up today, as we talked about, but probably not being healthy. So definitely interesting to look at that. But I guess we can move on and talk about the outlook here for this team. So their over/under win total. This is as of yesterday. It was 67.5. I don't know if it's if it's fully settled yet. I've seen some today that say 66.5 post trade. It might go down a little bit more, but I just went with what we had yesterday. It'll probably stabilize. I don't think it'll change that much. But 67.5 is the over under win total. Damian, are they able to have enough improvements from their young guys to get over that? Because last year they were like just under that.
Yeah, so yesterday I took the under. Today they traded MacKenzie Gore, so now I'm going to take the over.
Yeah.
No, I'm just I think I'm going to take comfortably the under here. It would take some major breakouts, I think, to even reach that number from last year. MacKenzie Gore was very dominant in the first half last year. Yes. They won almost every single one of his starts in the first half, I believe. I don't see the upside at the moment, right? Like, we need to see some performance from those guys first. So, and especially you're playing in a tough division, right? The Braves are going to be healthier. The Phillies are going to be good. And then the Mets have done a lot to improve their team. They've made some big moves here the last couple of days. So, and then the Marlins are scrappy, right? Like they're going to be pretty scrappy and on their own trying to work their way up. So, the Nationals are kind of in that start of their rephase again. So I feel like you're going to see more of a dip here. So I believe they're the 67.5. I think that's just way too high. I would be looking maybe around the 60-ish range right now for this team.
Yeah, the National League is just so tough this year. I mean, it's just really tough. But yeah, I think I'm going to take the under as well. I just don't have a lot of belief in these guys. But I'm thinking it'll probably be. I don't know if they'll lose 100 games, but it'll be around. I think they win 60 to 63 games.
Yeah, be right around
somewhere in there. But the odds to make the postseason, I didn't change those either. I imagine they've probably gone down, but plus 1,600 coming into the day-to-day. And the odds to win the National League East were plus 10,000. And the odds to win the World Series plus 50,000. I know that one hadn't changed. It looks like the odds to make the playoffs haven't really changed either. And the odds to win the division are the same. So, really, really big long shot there. It would take a ton of things to go right for this team. They're not going to be very good, but there's a lot to look forward to for Nationals fans. You've got some young guys to watch for, kind of enjoy watching your prospects grow up, get up through the minors. I can tell you from, as a baseball fan, from the time I started watching baseball was around, really seriously watching baseball was around the time the Braves were going through their rebuild, and watching those players grow from like guys in A-ball that you're kind of hyping up to becoming MVPs is just so much fun and rewarding at the end of it. So, still be excited, Nationals fans. But this year might be a little bit rough at the big league level. So, Damian, any final thoughts on the Washington Nationals?
I think it's mostly just like what we've kind of hit home here. Like, let this year develop. Let these guys make their footprint on this organization. They are very, very smart. They're going to be very thorough with how they build an organization too. So Nats fans, like, stick with it. I know it sucks that you gotta have to, like, you thought you had this piece after the Soto trade. You got this big haulback of prospects and seen another piece of that go away, but just be patient. I am very confident that those guys are going to be able to turn this organization around. It's just going to take some time now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that'll wrap it up for this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe. And I believe the next one is going to be the White Sox. They have the same odds as the Nationals and Rockies for the World Series, although both of these teams are better than the Rockies. But they'll be next. So be on the lookout for that. We're going to do one for every team. So, we'll be rolling them out here pretty quickly soon. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time.